يسعدنا أن نرحب بكم جميعا في الجلسة الثانية من يومنا الثاني، حيث ستقودها المهندسة مريم البلوشية رئيسة لجنة البيئة لدى المنظمة العربية للطيران المدني. المهندسة مريم البلوشي هي أول خبيرة عربية في مجال بيئة الطيران، بدأت في عام 2006 لتصبح مؤسسة بيئة الطيران في الإمارات المتحدة والمنطقة، وهي عضو دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة في اللجنة المعنية بحماية بيئة الطيران التابعة لمنظمة الطيران المدني الدولي منذ عام 2016، والرئيس الإقليمي للجنة بيئة الطيران بالمنظمة العربية للطيران المدني. مريم البلوشي هي رئيس مفاوضي ملف التغير المناخي قطاع الطيران في دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، وهي مدير البيئة في الهيئة العامة لطب دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة. ستأخذ المهندسة مريم في رحلة مثيرة في عالم السياسات والخطط المستقبلية ذات العلاقة بمجال الطاقات المتجددة والوقود البيئي في سلطنة عمان. تناقش هذه الجلسة رؤى مهمة واستراتيجيات حول مستقبل الطاقات المتجددة في سلطنة عمان، وفرص التوطين وخلق القيمة المضافة في قطاع الهيدروجين الأخضر، بالإضافة إلى السياسات والتشريعات الوطنية لاحتجاز الكربون واستخدامه وتخزينه. سنلقي أيضا نظرة على خطط شركة نماء في إنتاج الوقود الحيوي، وسنكتشف مستقبل تحويل النفايات إلى وقود للطائرات في سلطنة. ندعوكم جميعا للاستفادة القصوى من هذه الفرصة لفهم أفضل لتلك السياسات والخطط المخطط ومشاركة الأفكار بالقيمة التي قد تساهم في تحقيق التنمية المستدامة والازدهار في هذا المجال المهم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. شكرا أخوي راشد. And good morning everyone. As Rashid said, my name is Mariam Al-Blushi. I'm from the United Arab Emirates. I'm so delighted to moderate this important session. It's a continuation of this previous session, and it's the part 2 of feedstock. We heard a lot in the previous session about the challenges that many organization or private sector is facing, and they've been saying it's many times we need the government to be on board. So on this session, delighted to have the Ministry of Energy. I think we will be challenging them, and there was an idea to create a debate between the government versus the industry. So I'm not sure if we will end up with doing this debate, but I think we will have some more fun having the Ministry of Energy. And I think, as we mentioned yesterday, it's not about of energy, it's about every entity from the government should be on board. So the first takeaway from this session before it starts, we need, inshallah, in the future within the Oman government to create a roundtable where we have all the governmental entities. I showed yesterday a map of the UAE, so it's a lot of government entities should be on board. The financial institutes, the banks, the investors, as well the private sector. So this kind of discussion would encourage them to move forward. It's not their role only, it's everyone's role. So with that takeaway, which comes before even the presentation, I would like to start with Mr. Riyad. Engineer Riyad Al-Busaidi is an efficiency engineer at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral with around 10 years of experience in oil and gas, as well in the electricity sector, transmission, high voltage and distribution, low voltage. Okay, I do apologize, I'm a chemical engineer. Currently, he's responsible for energy strategy to support Oman's low carbon transition. Engineer Riyad will give you a very high level presentation, and it's very interesting to see how Oman is moving on their strategy. And after his presentation, I have very critical question to him. And one of the requests I received that we need to have more audience engagement in our session because we missed that in the previous session. So I will ask my distinguished speaker to be shorter in their presentation, not more than 15 minutes. And we need to open the floor for the engagement. I know a huge audience from the oil sector is here today, aviation as well. So we need this engagement, inshallah, in this session. So with no further delays, Mr. Engineer Riyad, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Riyad Busaidi from Ministry of Energy and Minerals, MEM. I believe I don't need to introduce MEM. Just to highlight, someone yesterday had a pie chart for gas emissions, and it was including different sectors from aviation, transportation, industrial, residential, and electrical sector. There was the high percentage of emissions from electricity sector, and it's meanwhile from the generation for electricity. Today I will speak about Oman energy transition and renewable energy projects. Guiding principles for strategic goals. Long-term energy security is to supply energy, uninterrupted energy to community daily activity, reliability of supply, security of supply. Long-term energy security mainly is to timely investment to supply energy with align with economic development. Decarbonize and reduce emissions is to increase renewable energy projects, changing the old concepts of electrical generation, while increasing renewable energy. You are reducing the gas emissions sphere. Therefore, you are aligned with the net zero target by 2050. Stay competitive in energy sector is to change the old concepts of electrical generations from gas turbine generations, diesel generations, coal generation. Coal, actually, it's not available in Oman, but I think it's in UAE. They have some coal generation for electricity, but it's decreasing. Applying the new technology of renewable energy that I will talk later. Accelerating competitive in energy sector will open trust on investments. Grow low carbon economy is to an efficient use of clean energy and clean resources. Developed country and as just Maryam Mendes and more teamwork to bring all the entities to work together to have high quality of work and high quality of life. Oman committed to achieving net zero target by 2050. We have annual growth of 3% of electricity demand and 30% of clean energy to be committed by 2030. We have highs from 2,000 to 2,500 kilowatt meters. Also, we have an average of wind potential with 8 to 10 meter per seconds. Also, weather most of the year. It's sunny most of the year. It's around 342 days. The power peaks for MIS. Let me explain what is MIS and DPS and PS. We have three charts for MIS. MIS is mainly for the region governments from Muscat to Dara. DPS is Dhufar and MPS is Musandam. Inshallah, after maybe 2 years, all these will be connected together in one connections. As we can see, there is an increase in demand from 2016 to 2020 for all of these governments, and we see a drop in 2020. That was on during COVID, and for our projection forecasting for the next 8 years, we have the low case and the expected case for the high case. Sorry, just to mention for the high peaks, for the high peak for this year, we reached gigawatt for demand. For the next 7 years or to 8 years projections, we expect around 9 gigawatt in 2029 for electricity demand. On this increase of demand, we need to increase on generation, but our concept is to be covered by renewable energies. Low energy emission sources can meet its energy by 2050, as mentioned before. And just to explain, I don't know if we have a pointer here. We do have. The eastern coast of the map, we have the average potential of wind energy. You can see from Duqm to Salalah. And on Zahira and Dakhliya regions, we have the solar potentials. The blocks that has the colors for yellow, green, and pink, they all are associated for renewable energy projects and hydrogen for around 50,000 kilometers. growing momentum for energy transition and renewable energy. This is the outcomes. Just to start, our first pilot project was on Al-Mazyuna in 2014, with generating 300 kilowatts. After on 2018, we have Mara CSP solar project. This was for it's off grid for PDO. It's using them for producing steam to enhance oil recovery, the thick oil. On 2009, we have our first wind project on Dhafar. It generates 50 megawatts. On March 2020, we have Amin Solar. This is 100 megawatt. Also, it was for PDO. On on 2021, we have Qabas Solar. This one in Suhar for use, which generates 25 megawatts. On 2021, we have Ibri 2 solar IPP, which generates 500 megawatts, and there is expansion for it for maybe on 2027. Another Ibri 3 is coming to the grid, which generates again 500 megawatt with total 1,000 megawatt renewable energy. On March 2022, we have the Royal Decree of creating the Directorate General for Renewable Energy Hydrogen in the Ministry. Also, on October 2022, we have the Royal Decree to announce the net zero target for Oman by 2050. On this year, on March 2003, we have awarded for Manah 1 and Manah 2 with around, this is solar project, which generate 1,000 megawatts. And our future renewable energy projects in Oman, I just mentioned Manah 1 and Manah 2, which will be on 2025. On 2027, we have plenty of projects on a Sharqiyya South government that will generate, this is a wind farm with capacity 100 megawatt. On a Daqum wind IPP with capacity 200 megawatts. Ras Madraka project with capacity 200 megawatts. And as I mentioned, it will be 500 megawatt on 2027. On 2028, we are planning to have the waste to energy project on Barka that will generate 140 megawatts. And I think this is my final presentation. Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Riyadh. This was very efficient, 10 minutes. So I think it's very interesting to see how Oman is moving to use other renewable energies to produce electricity. I know it's linked with the set net zero target for 2050, but we didn't, as this forum is focused on the aviation sector or the aviation fuel, either it's LCAF or SAF or other cleaner energy. Just a small question before we go to the next presentation. How you are gonna include, or are you planning to include aviation to be part of such transitioning energy pathway? It's not supposed to be just international aviation. If you are working with even the ground support and other sources of reducing the emission within the aviation, is there any plan for that?
Just to explain, the airports are connected to the grid. So a separate airports, renewable energy, meanwhile, we don't have these projects, but we can connect them as a clean from our clean and renewable energies, just to connect it to the grid and supply the airport and aviation service.
The critical question is not this one; it will come after. So I will move from the Ministry of Energy sector. We have Hydrom here also again. I will have Mr. Tom from Hydrom. His presentation will be focusing on localization opportunities in green hydrogen. Mr. Tom Costa joined Hydrom Oman as the downstream manager to support the in the green hydrogen sector in Oman. At Hydrom, he is responsible for the hydrogen project with its various boards and special economic zones to accelerate the development of the necessary commercial. He's a core member of the team of critical thinkers focused on attracting hard to abate downstream industries to the Sultanate of Oman and advancing the onshore the supply chain. Period joining Hydrom, Tom spent 5 years as a program manager energy and industry at the strategic department of Sohar Port and Free Zone, where he focused on innovation and energy transition. I think we will be hearing again a continuation of their yesterday's as well projects and what Hydrom is doing and in involving and accelerating the hydrogen project. We know it's very important in this region, and it's very encouraging that to see a number of states in this region working on this promising long way energy for the aviation. So the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. And first of all, congratulations to the CA. Great efforts in organizing such a great event, very relevant in these days. Today, I'm here to provide an overview of
Tom,
Oman's.
I think your voice is low.
So I'm here to provide an overview of the activities that Hydrom is currently undertaking in Oman. Provides a clear overview of Oman's strategy, Oman's green hydrogen strategy, and also to finalize with the localization opportunities that can emerge from the green hydrogen sector, particularly in the context of sustainable aviation fuels. So when it comes to the global sustainability, hydrogen has a pivotal role to play as it touches three key elements that are critical for global economies and also to tackle the great challenges that we're facing today. So these three elements are access to energy, energy security, and ultimately the environment. As we all know, following the recent developments in Ukraine, particularly Europe has been hit heavily when it comes to shortage of natural gas, shortages of energy. So the topic of energy security has become ever so more critical today than ever before. Focusing on Oman in particular, as many of you are familiar with the region, Oman and other countries in the GCC have economies which are heavily reliant on revenues from oil and gas. So many of the jobs, many of the government revenues are brought in from oil and gas operations. Oman wants to leverage on the availability of solar and wind to transition its economy to capture additional projects, to create jobs, to attract investment, in order to diversify the local economy and reduce its dependencies on fossil fuels. To do so, Oman has 5 separate core objectives. So the first core objective is to ensure energy security. This is for both Oman but also globally. Oman has a role to play on the global scene. We also want to support the economical diversification. So step away from the dependency on fossil fuels, bring back additional industries to Oman that want to leverage on the availability of clean, cheap energy to build their products, so that products produced in Oman can reach out to the global markets with a low carbon footprint. We want also to support the decarbonization of all sectors in Oman. So this is heavy industry, this is logistics, this is shipping, and obviously sustainable aviation. We want to create a green hydrogen sector with a competitive price of hydrogen. So this is critical in order to ensure that Oman plays a very big role in the global markets, and it becomes appealing for international investors to come to Oman to invest in projects in Oman, and this will then support the creation of jobs. Ultimately, we want to support innovation, we want to support academia, as to ensure that the future jobs in this emerging sector will be captured by young, talented Omanis that are seeking new job opportunities. The advantage that Oman has in many other locations is that many of these jobs are similar to the oil and gas. There's a lot of transferable skill, project management, engineering, and so on. These are all skills that are already taught in national university. They just need to be fine-tuned in order to ensure that future Omanis can then easily step into this emerging sector. So why Oman? Why hydrogen? Why renewables? So when it comes to solar power, it's no surprise to everyone here that Oman has abundant solar radiation. As my colleague from MEM previously mentioned, Oman boasts really from abundant, high quality radiation can be harnessed through solar PV panels, produce cheap, reliable electricity. In addition to that, Oman also has an abundance of wind resource, primarily along the coast of Oman, so the regions of Dhofar, Al Jazer, and Duqm, and Al Wusta. And what makes these regions particularly interesting is the fact that wind is strongest at night in Oman. So you have a high complementary between solar and wind, where you can generate renewable power during the day with solar, and at night you get renewable power with wind. And this allows projects which intend to produce green hydrogen to produce hydrogen continuously throughout the day. In order to do so, Hydrom, we've received by means of a royal decree earlier this year the right to develop lands in Oman across an area of 50,000 square kilometers in the regions of Dhofar, Al Jazer, and Duqm. It is Hydrom's role to ensure that these areas get developed. So what we do is we divide these lands into parcels, and we bring those into the market. We auction these lands, and we welcome international developers to come to Oman to propose their project, and we will in turn evaluate them against a wide range of criteria, and we will select the projects that make most sense and will bring the most benefits for the Omani economy. So Oman, a vision needs targets, and to do so, we've established the following targets. By 2030, Oman wants to produce 1 million to 1.5 million tons of green hydrogen per year. This equates into roughly 8 to 15 gigawatts of electrolyzers and 16 to 30 gigawatts of renewables. To give an idea of the expenses, each one of these numbers, so 1 gigawatt of electrolyzers and 1 gigawatt of renewables equates into roughly $1 billion of investment. So these are big projects. And we want to leverage on the early momentum and to increase this capacity gradually to 2040 and 2050. So the sector, we work in close proximity with my colleagues from MEM. So we've organized the sector in such a way where we have Ministry of Energy and Minerals as the policymaker and the regulator in this sector. Hydrom was created as an orchestrator for this sector. So we are the vehicle whereby land becomes available. So we prepare and orchestrate the auction management and infrastructure management. Additionally, we also oversee the development of the necessary common infrastructure to make sure that this sector is executed, and so that ultimately the developers, they can do what they do best. We provide them the rights for the land, and they can focus then on the financing, on renewable power, on the production of hydrogen, and the production of derivatives. Finally, when it comes to shipping and logistics, we rely on Asyat, the logistic arm of OIA of Oman, to support through their partnerships in the ports, in the logistics in Oman. Now, next section is to go through the green hydrogen journey. So an overview of what we've done so far and what we intend to do from here on. And you will notice that we work in very close proximity with MEM, so we also use some of the same slides, but slightly different. So back in 2021, by royal decree, royal directive, the Ministry of Energy also created a DG position for renewables and green hydrogen. We have in August 2021 the creation of the High Fly Alliance, so a national alliance with the key stakeholders present in Oman who have vested interest in ensuring that the green hydrogen sector gets developed. October 22, this is when Hydrom was officially launched, so almost 1 year ago. November 2022, we started the auction process. So a lot of work had been done. Till that point, we were in November ready to launch the auction. Q1 2023, Hydrom secured by means of the royal the access for the lands, the rights for the lands. This was essential for us so that Hydrom could then in turn enter into commercial agreements with the investors who would win the auction process. And in June 2023, we awarded the first projects. So the winners of the tender for these projects were then selected, and we've now entered into binding agreements with those parties to develop these projects. Directly thereafter, we've also launched the next auction process. So the first one was focused in Duqm, the second one is now being focused in Salalah, and it's presently ongoing. So just as an overview, the first auction round is in Duqm. We had 2 blocks for public auction. These have been awarded, and presently we have 3 blocks in the present auction in Salalah, in the region of Dhofar, up in the mountains close to Turnberate, for those who are familiar. Going into the scope of the work, so the developers, they are expected to focus on the renewables generation, so the solar and wind generation, on the green hydrogen production, so installing and operating the electrolyzers, on production producing the derivatives. So these are the products from the green hydrogen. It can be ammonia, it can be methanol, it can be sustainable aviation fuels, it can be green steel, and so on. So it's the responsibility of the developers to ensure that the hydrogen they produced is consumed within their own project company. And they're also responsible for offtake. So they need to coordinate with internationals and ensure that there will be an off-taker willing to purchase their product. Quite importantly, elements of common infrastructure is outside of the scope of the developers, and this is the responsibility of Hydrom to ensure it gets developed in partnership with the national champions, the national utility companies. So this includes production and transmission of water to produce the green hydrogen, transmission of electrons, and the transportation of green hydrogen from the blocks to the downstream areas within the special economic zones and the ports. And this is how we envision the sector. So this is a high-level schematic of how the sector is organized. We have the blocks in the interior, so roughly 50 to 100 to 150 kilometers inland. This is where you'll have the solar and the wind projects and the electrolyzers. And then these will be connected with the special economic zones and the ports through common infrastructure. This is where you see the desalination plant, the water pipelines to bring the water to the blocks to produce the green hydrogen. And at the electrolyzers, you make use of the renewable energy to split the water into oxygen and hydrogen. The hydrogen then is transported by a green hydrogen pipeline and brought then to the special economic zones, into the ports where the derivative plants are. So in the first auction, we signed 5 different agreements. So 2 of them are from the public auction, and in addition, we had 3 additional legacy initiatives. Legacy initiatives are projects that have been already in Oman for several years. They've had the same process from Hydrum, but they were not. They were granted an exemption when it came to participate in the auction. But they do. But the others are, for the biggest part, identical between all 5 of them. So we have the first one is the AMNA project, a consortium with CIP, Blue Power Partners in Kandra. Second one is a consortium being led by POSCO and ENGIE. Then as a legacy initiatives, we have the GEO, a consortium being led by OQ, Intercontinental Energy, and Shell. The second legacy initiative is BP, and one is a consortium by DEME and OQ. Moving forward, present auction, we have presently 3 blocks available in the region of Dhofar, close to Salalah, and the applications are presently open. So we are now in the process of qualifying the parties that are interested in participating in this round, with ultimately the objective of awarding the blocks in early 2024. Yeah, going to the localization opportunities. So we as Hydrum, we as Ministry, with support of Ministry and OIA, we're really looking at what are the broader opportunities from this green hydrogen sector in Oman, and they're not few. So there are ample opportunities when it comes to local employment, ample opportunities for education and research to ensure that academia is up to speed with these projects. There are elements of local sourcing to ensure that these projects, when they come to Oman, when they need building materials, that they can purchase the materials domestically, and potentially also the services that they need. We are also looking at the domestic industry. So when it comes to the upstream industries, so the question is, can we put some of the necessary components to install these wind farms or solar panels or electrolyzers in Oman? The answer is yes, but which ones and who will do it? This is currently being explored. And then there's elements when it comes to the downstream, so ammonia, sustainable aviation, and so on. So what is the involvement of Oman, of national entities in the development of these sectors? So just to give an overview of the equipment and the processes that we will need and where we see opportunities for national entities. So there's elements of the solar panels. So this is the solar panel itself, but also the trackers, the foundations, the installations, the operations and management, maintenance that go along with it. The same applies for the electrolyzers, and then going into the common use infrastructure. There's hydrogen transportation, the water transportation, electricity transmission, hydrogen industrial use. We see the potential for using green hydrogen or clean hydrogen in the refining operations, in the steel processing, in the producing of fuels for shipping, in the production of sustainable chemicals. And then ultimately, hydrogen can be used in a wide range of derivatives and fuels as well, which then includes e-fuels or synthetic fuels, such as sustainable aviation fuels. Looking at the priorities where we believe we should focus, so we have identified 4 primary areas to focus. So these are for the short and medium term. So this is the shipping, production of green steel, the production of ammonia, also for exporting other economies. But when it comes to aviation, in this particular case, you can see that it's a secondary priority at this moment, as we are also eagerly waiting for the markets to send clear signs that, yes, they are willing and ready to purchase sustainable aviation fuels to decarbonize their aviation operations. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. This is my presentation.
Thank you, Tom. So we came at the last slide, the aviation sector. So I saw many ongoing partnerships and MOUs signed between different entities within the government. I think you are okay with the government. You don't need anything, right? There is no challenge. I have just one highlight from your principles slide. You said that you are one of the principles is to create a green hydrogen. So it's like enabling you to go and accelerate such market, and your challenges are like limited now, and you can move forward and start even within producing the green hydrogen for the aviation. And you said it's like gonna be a few years coming. Do you have any or understanding when this time frame happen for aviation? I know in the UAE it's not as well as soon or the quick when, it's gonna be a future plan. It's like they're accelerating such project aviation. We are aviation here today, so we need to make sure that every region and every single state has the right SAF for airlines as well.
No, so that's a very good and important question to address. So what we're doing is we're providing a clear framework for international developers to come forward with the intention of executing their projects. We do it in such a way as to ensure that the cost of green hydrogen produced is as low as possible. This is why we're pursuing a common infrastructure, providing a clear, transparent mechanism through which includes all of the conditions throughout the lifetime of the projects, so that green hydrogen can be used as quickly as possible. Once you can do that, then all other options become open. You know how much that green hydrogen is going to cost, so that you can then in turn know how much it's still going to cost, how much is the green ammonia going to cost, how much is the sustainable aviation fuel going to cost, and how much you can actually produce and utilize. So we're providing the essential cornerstones so that the market can then really start assessing the wide range of opportunities that are presented before it.
So the cost is always, and the investment as well, and the airlines are willing to buy or not. So I'm going back to the Ministry of Energy. So my next speaker is Mr. Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed is working with hydrogen and strategy at the Ministry of Energy. So this is your counterpartners here. Mohammed is an engineer as well. He holds a master's in politics and technology. He prepared for Aramco and Oman Hydrogen Center. In his presentation, he will be highlighting general policies and strategies for Sultanate Oman to achieve carbon neutrality and promote the development of sustainable economy. Mohammed, the floor is yours, and it's going to be a very interesting as well presentation. It's called Carbon Capture and Utilization in the Oman, National Policies and Legislation.
Thank you very much, Mariam, for the introduction. I would like to thank the Civil Aviation Authority for organizing this valuable event that is eye-opening, and I congratulate you on organizing this event. And as you heard from Engineer Riyad and Tom, that Oman is moving forward when it comes to development of renewable energy as well as clean hydrogen. You've heard from Mr. Riyad the targets that have been set and the projects that are materializing in the renewable energy realm. And as Maria mentioned, that everything is interlinked. This is something so when it comes to the development of renewable energies, we're also talking about electrifications. When we talk about civil aviation, we're also talking about the facilities, the airports, and how to decarbonize that. And renewable energy will play a significant role in that area. And the same thing as what we heard yesterday from Dr. Badah's presentation about the carbon footprint when it comes to aviation fuel and the supply chain linked with that. And so the whole process of emitting carbons really from the upstream operations. And there's also room to conduct electrification solutions to decarbonize that segment. So one solution could be to electrify the furnaces, for example. And what Tom mentioned also about the hydrogen strategy of Oman and the targets that we have already set, 1 million metric tons by the year 2030, 8 million metric tons by the year 2030, and the 5 project development agreements that have been signed already that are expected to materialize over the next 7 years. Such projects could also play a role in the aviation sector. Hydrogen, as Tom mentioned, could be fuel for aviation thanks to its high energy content relative to its mass, around 30 kilogram. That's higher than oil, gas, and batteries for that matter. And so it could play a role. My presentation will be about CCUS in particular, and there's also potential to combine hydrogen and carbons to create synthetic fuels. That's another area of decarbonization. And so, I'll touch bases on the global experiences related to CCUS activities in general. There are more than 20 national and subnational governments established laws and regulations for CCUS in general. As of 2022, there are 30 commercial CCUS facilities, mainly in the North America part. 200 projects are in pipeline, mainly driven by enhanced oil recovery and enhanced gas recovery, EOR, EDR. 25 countries globally have developed or are developing CCUS facilities. And Oman, there are a couple of projects that are under development now. One of them is Blue Horizon, which is developed by PDO and Shell Oman. And we hope that some of these projects would also materialize. This is the value chain CCUS. You have natural carbon sinks as one mean to do natural carbon capturing. Another is to point sources carbon capturing, and through that you could also do direct air capturing from the atmosphere, and then you go purification and compression processes and transportation processes. And one potential is to store that carbon in aquifers or depleted oil and gas fields. And we're working closely with some of the interested parties in Oman and developing such solutions. And then the last bit of it is utilization, in which captured carbon could be utilized in different domains, including the production of synthetic fuels. What's interesting is that plants do this naturally, and this is something that we as humans are trying to imitate. They do carbon capturing and splitting of water to produce carbohydrates, energy in general. The CCUS anticipated role is to tackle emissions from existing energy assets. That includes upstream operations, industrial plants, hard-to-abate sectors such as the cement, steel, and heavy transportation. It will also be utilized to produce low carbon hydrogen through steam methane reforming processes of natural gas alongside carbon capturing, removing carbon from the atmosphere through DAC processes, utilizing that carbon in the fertilizer industry, such as the production of urea or ammonia, enhanced oil recovery, and the creation of synthetic fuels. In terms of reports and policies related to CCUS and blue hydrogen, globally we have the IPCC report, in which a special report came out in the year 2018 that entails recommendations for policymakers, and it mentions that should and expected to play a role in achieving carbon neutrality by mid-century. There's also the IEA reports and also emphasizes on the role that CCUS will play in that domain. And the Sultanate of Oman, we have high-level policies that have been established. As mentioned, we have a carbon neutrality policy by the year 2020, the Royal Decree 10/2023, which came out in February of this year, that calls for the structuring and development of renewable energy projects or clean hydrogen projects as well. And it established the mechanism for investments, which includes a fair, competitive auctioning process that is orchestrated by Hydrom. And there's also the Carbon Management Lab, which took place in November 2022, which established a baseline for Oman's carbon emissions and methods to decarbonize our economy. And it also entails a set of recommendations as to how we could reach carbon neutrality by the year 2050. And so these are parts of what came out from that Carbon Management Lab. Oman's current CO2 equivalent emissions, so that includes all greenhouse gas emissions, is around 90 million metric tons. If we go by business as usual, year 2050, we will reach an estimated carbon emissions of 105 million metric tons. And so if you look at the different segments of the economy and how they contribute to carbon emissions, you will find that industry plays the most significant role when it comes to carbon emissions. So the steel, aluminum, cement, urea, and ammonia, methanol, petrochemical industry emit carbons, and then you also have the oil and gas industry, which comes in second place. And again, I emphasize on the value chain and how everything is interlinked. The power sector comes in third, and then the transportation sector. Here again, there's a more focus on the type of viable solutions that could be put in place to decarbonize our economies, as it came out from the Carbon Management Lab. And so if we focus on industry, the biggest emitter, there are three viable solutions, which are further electrifications, as emphasized by Riyadh, and the idea of using hydrogen in processes and as feedstock, and also CCUS is expected to play a role in this domain. In terms of CCUS, the expected percentage of total abatement is around 15%. And in terms of electrification renewables, it's around 35%. Sustainable hydrogen is around 8% of our local economy. Here again, so what's important is to really do a techno-commercial and social readiness assessment to understand what would work and what type of technologies should we invest in. And so as a government, we've set the high-level policies and strategies And what we hope is to also have a bottom-up approach in which industry and what technologies they bet on, and how to measure such technologies, whether it was through pilot projects or small-scale projects, or even research and development. And then we could, together with that combination top-down, bottom-up approach, we could work collaboratively on developing the right sorts of permits, licenses, and certifications to get such projects going. And then from there, we build on a more detailed regulatory framework that is fit for purpose, that would allow industry to achieve the aspirations. This is an example of a techno-economic socio in relation to CCUS. And so we have, for example, experience when it comes to energy management, when it comes to transporting energy, and also some experience when it comes to capturing carbons for the purpose of sweetening the gas or for the purpose of reducing CO2 content in natural gas. And we could build on these experiences for the sake of developing a value chain in relation to CCUS. At the same time, we've also developed high-level regulatory frameworks, and we could get into the details of that regulatory framework through the method that I've mentioned, a top-down and bottom-up approach. And so this is the process of how to develop such policies. So you define the regulatory scope, and then you do environmental review and permitting. You enable the first movers, as we mentioned. CCUS, we mentioned several projects that are being developed at the moment, Blue Horizon project. And we are the trailblazer approach, or the early mover approach, in which we work together with industry to develop the right set of permits and licenses to get such projects going in a safe and controlled manner. And then from there, we build on a regulatory framework that is fit for purpose. And we also need to take into consideration to have safe and secure op in the longer run and consider liabilities. And the same thing when it comes to hydrogen as well. We're working on a pilot project for a pre-certification scheme that involves one of the developers, and we're working collaboratively with the EU for that instance. But we could do the same thing with other end markets. This is again just to re-emphasize the need to look into the first movers and work collaboratively together. Thank you very much.
I think, Muhammad, the last slide was very important, which you passed, the collaboration and establishment of the framework. Because this question came in the previous session, how we can engage with the government to set the right framework policy which enable the industry to move forward and not restrict them. I think this slide is a kind of an answer to that question, and so the wish. So if you just elaborate, because we are beyond the schedule.
Yes. So as I mentioned, it's important to work in collaboration with industry, with other relevant stakeholders and regulators, and in the realm of aviation, it would be CAA alongside us and other relevant actors in this area. And the whole purpose is to really capture investors who are willing and are interested to invest in Oman when it comes to sustainable aviation fuels. Okay, and from there we could build on we could establish the right set of permits and policies that would enable the first movers to gain ground in Oman and de-risk through pilot projects, small-scale projects, their plans, and then establish a fit-for-purpose policy framework that would enable and encourage other investors to come in and ease business here. And that's the approach we're taking when it comes to CCUS, and the same could be applied when it comes to sustainable aviation fuels.
Thank you, Mohammed. I have 2 left presentations. I promised the audience to engage them, so we'll try to be efficient and quick, stick to the time. So my next speaker is Dr. Antisar, the only female in my session. And I have noticed in the fall we have only 4 female speakers, so we need to increase the numbers of female speakers in aviation sector as well, or the energy sector. So Dr. Antisar al-Sulaimani currently serves as a Chief Process Engineer at Nama Water Service Company. She holds a PhD and Master degree in Civil Environmental Engineering from Sultan Qaboos University, as well as a Bachelor degree in Chemical and Process Engineering. Interesting, Dr. Antisar. From the same university. She worked on several projects in sewage treatment technologies and the evaluation of all treatments technique and sewage operation. She is currently working as the project manager for the consulting service project to develop the strategic plan for managing sewage sludge and converting it to a biofuel as part of renewable energy. She is also involved in the technical assessment of the rehabilitations of sewage network in the Bosher area in Muscat government. I have the ink So with no further delay, Dr. Antisar, the floor is yours. I'm so interested and excited about her project because it's different feedstock that they're exploring in Oman, and it might be a promising one, and it's going to be one of the future pilot project, if we can say, to the Ministry of to take it on board as well.
Thank you, Mariam, for the great introduction, and I would like to thank Oman Civil Aviation Authority for giving me this opportunity to represent the Water Service Company to illustrate our strategic initiative and plan towards the concept of the waste to energy, which is considered one of the potential pathway to produce or to the production of the biofuel and SAF. So here is the content of my presentation, starting by giving an overview of the waste to energy, and then what are the available technologies of the waste to energy, and elaborating in a description on the technology, on the technical details of the anaerobic digester technology. Then how can this technology is implemented within the wastewater treatment processes to be utilizing our waste, and we try to recover the resource from the water treatment plants. Finally, the current initiative status in our Nama Water Service Company. So climate change is a very hot topic at the recent moments. So we are all responsible for the climate change. Therefore, we have to reduce what we can and we have to offset what we can't. The concept of the waste to energy technology is that we are trying to recover the interrupted valuable resources contained in the organic biological waste. So the waste to energy concept includes methods where we extract those valuable resources in those waste, and then we convert it to the produced like biofuel, and it can be generated into electricity and heat. Well, the waste to energy concept provides several environmental and economical benefits. One of the most economical benefit that is considered a cost-effective near-term solutions to provide the energy security targets. And the other environmental benefits is that we are meeting the renewable energy targets and thus reducing the greenhouse gas emissions and the carbon around the whole world. The other benefits from the environmental viewpoint that those concepts or those technologies provide opportunities for improving the resource management practices and as well enforcing or endorsing the policymakers. The technologies of the waste to energy are very different, and there are very different types of these technologies that are available in the market. So basically, those technologies are classified based on the conversion mechanisms. So we can see that we have the most common technology, which is based on the combustion, which is the thermal, purely thermal conversion mechanisms. And this is the direct combustion by the incinerating the solid waste to produce gas and to produce the ash as well. The second technology can be the thermal and mechanical, which is including the size reduction, from screening of the municipal biological waste and then drying it in order to produce the refuse-derived fuel gas. There are also the combination of thermal chemical such as the pyrolysis, gasifications, and liquefacions to produce the syngas. And lastly but not least, the most important wastewater treatment field from the water sector is the biochemical conversion, which can be categorized into fermentation to produce the ethanol or to the anaerobic digestion to produce the biogas. So where in the biogas or the ethanol, the gaseous fuel can be extracted from these produced products. Moving to give a description of the anaerobic digestion technology, the anaerobic digestion technology is purely a biological process that is depending on the anaerobic or the biological activity, where it converts the waste, that's the organic substrates that is involved in the waste, in the absence of the oxygen, to produce the biogas, and then also the digestate can be produced like composting, or it can be also incinerated to be producing the ash material as a co-product from the process itself. So the produced biogas is composed mainly from the methane, carbon dioxide, and smaller amounts of hydrogen sulfide and ammonia, and of course traces elements of the hydrogen sulfide and the ammonia as part of the odorous gases. That is because due to the anaerobic biological activity reactions that happen in the process. The calorific value of the produced biogas is 21.48 megajoule per meter cubic compared to that of the natural gas, which is about 36.14 megajoule per meter cubic. The table shows the comparison in terms of volumetric compositions between the produced biogas from the anaerobic digester technology compared to that of the natural gas 91. So we can see that the technology can achieve up to 70% from volume composition as basically based on methane, and the rest of the percentage from 30 to 45% of carbon dioxide. There are different types of reactors available in the market, and this is varying in the process configuration and the operation conditions. So the type of the reactor should be selected based on the input feedstock characteristics and based on the output desired product, and of course, not forgetting the economic recovery in the mine. So we have like the reactors can be classified based on the configuration mode to continuous or batch flow reactors, and based on the operating temperature, it can be classified operation range from the 30 to 35 degrees Celsius, and the thermophilic reactors that can be operated from 50 to 65 degrees Celsius. It has been reported that the thermophilic reactors have lower retention time due to the accelerated biological activity of the high temperature inside the reactors. The reactors can be also classified based on the feedstock content into either wet process, which is having low solid content, or to the dry process, which have higher solid content. So how we can implement this technology in the sewage treatment plants? Typical conventional wastewater treatment plants is producing what's called sewage sludge, which is defining as the biological or the biosolids. And we have primary and secondary sludge that is produced from either the primary and secondary clarifier units inside the sewage treatment plants, where the primary and secondary sludge is mixed, and then in order to achieve the operating temperature required, and then it's fed to the anaerobic digester to produce the biogas. Our current initiative status, we are actually doing in a water service company, we are exploring the visibility in both aspects, from the financial and technical aspects, in order to implement the anaerobic digestion technology within the sewage treatment plants. And as per the plan of the project, we hopefully by end of this year, we expect it to complete the overall strategic sludge management strategy, and we will identify the first potential project we'll have for the anaerobic digestion inside the sewage treatment plants. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Antisar. This was efficient as well. I have a question, but I will leave it till the end because I need to save the time for the audience. So the deal is I will start with my last presentation and last speakers, Mr. John. He's the founder and CEO of X2E company, where the company is dedicated to finding solutions for clean energy. He's also a serial entrepreneur and the founder of companies such as Utopia, Mother X, and SEM Energy Ltd. So his presentation will be focusing on the 4 jet fuel project that they have around the world and the 2 planned in Oman and many other things which I leave it to you to explain to the audience. So it's a very interesting showcasing presentation, but please stick with the time, only 15 minutes.
Shukran. Thank you very much. For a moment, I did think that we were in the CCUS and hydrogen forum, but we are in sustainable aviation. So today what we're going to show you is the one thing we came here to see is how are we going to create jet fuel in Oman. And one of the first things that we wanted to showcase, how do we do it elsewhere in the world? So one of the major projects that we found is that we like to use feedstocks that are sustainable in themselves. One of the biggest issues in the US is the paper industry. The paper industry, obviously with the reduction of paper being used in the world, means that what we're finding is the woodland and the sustainable woodland and the industries behind them. So that's the sawmills, the paper companies, the factories themselves, they don't have a use anymore. So huge losses in jobs, huge losses in GDP. Now, one of the first projects that we have is in Portland, Maine in the US. We actually own a large pipeline that was existing from an old oil and gas days of old, where we were transporting fuels up to Loring Air Force Base, which is bordered with Canada, down to Sears Port in the bottom of Maine there. So what we've done is we've utilized the feedstocks of the sustainable woodlands. It was always going to be there, and we're using forestry practices to cut down the trees and replant them and use them in biomass as far as we possibly can do. And we've turned those sawmills first into biochar production. So we burn, which doesn't sound great or very sustainable or very environmentally friendly, burning the wood. But what we need to do for that practice is to create the syngas and create the CO2 that we need for the first part of our jet fuel production. So with that, what we've then done is we need to take that syngas and we need to take that process and we need to turn it into jet fuel. And that's where we're utilizing some of the latest technologies around the world for gas to liquid, so gas to liquid processes. Like typically what you'll find is that most of the technologies utilize the syngas to create the jet fuel. What we've done is we've flipped it on its head. We're actually using the syngas for the energy, using solid oxide fuel cells and completely combustionless technologies to allow us to have a clean energy source for the gas to liquid systems. And then we're taking all of the CO2, and even within the anode exhausts from the fuel cells, you have pure water, pure distillate water at 330 degrees C. So we take everything within that process and make it completely carbonless, carbon negative technology basis. There is no emissions whatsoever. Even if we do have CO2 emissions, we utilize companies like 4401 to mineralize and completely rejuvenate and store that CO2 permanently instead of injecting it down a well and hoping it's going to stay there. So with the technologies that are there, we often use Fischer-Tropsch. It's one of the main techs that are out there. And with this first project, we're looking at 100 million gallons of jet fuel per year. We have a secondary project in Alberta in Canada, where we're going to come down into the US with the same pipeline infrastructure, and that will be another 1 gallons per year. That sounds like a lot, 200 million gallons. amount of jet fuel that the world requires for its projected site, it doesn't even touch the sites. It's not even 2% of what we need. So there's a requirement for jet fuel. So why are we in Oman, and why do we want to be here in terms of our investments as X2E? So what we planned, and Mahar gave you a spoiler this morning, that Oman, our first investment in Oman as X2E was Wakut. We met the partners, Talal Hassan and Mahar, and we knew that these guys had the passion and they had the right idea of our values of what we'd like to invest in, and a good starting point of where we really want to go with this business. So when we talk about the Civil Aviation Authority or any of the aviation authorities, is there feedstock? Is there a want and warrant for jet fuel to be required? And it is a very huge, resounding yes. There is a gigantic requirement for jet fuel. And we invest in different ways, and we invest and fund these projects in completely different ways. So typically we don't use banks, we don't use local funds, we use large infrastructure funds, and we use off-take contract forward selling. So when we're looking to finance and fund these projects, it used to be the age-old saying where if you build it, they will come. In this case with jet fuel and the requirement for jet fuel in this market today, it's not a case of if we build it, they will come. We can whisper about a building will come. There are contracts and builds for SAF with Nesty, Topso, where they don't even have the plans for these plants, and companies like World Connect, World Fuels, who supply all the jet fuel to the market, are actually already pre-buying forward projections on jet fuel, because we know that at some point there's going to be a delta difference where effectively the price of jet fuel will go up, even more so probably than what it is now, before it comes back down and stabilizes. What we'd like to do is we'd like to actually move forward and actually bring in a sustainable and cost-effective jet fuel to stop that from happening in region. So you'll see two projects here, and where the challenge of obviously what Mahar was talking about with, do we put the oil that we produce to shipping or to transport, or do we stop the issues that we have with those markets and we just go straight to jet fuel? So in this case, what we've done is we've created two feasibility studies, which are already completed. And we're looking to project this entire market basis into SAF and eSAF. And I'll show you how we do both later on. Now, again, when we're talking about feedstock, right now, there is a feedstock war around the world. Topso, again, and Nesty are very quickly and very aggressively moving around the world to try and buy every bit of feedstock that they can get their hands on. And these are all waste produced. So you're looking at palm oil and the likes, where there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it, and it's easy to get to. Now within Oman, what we've wanted to do and what we are doing is we're creating three separate markets. So the first one is that there isn't enough in the world to even think about producing the amount of jet fuel that we need in country or as a global basis. So how do we get the actual feedstock that we want to? So what we've done is we've created a sub company called FAY and Sayala. Now what Sayala does is it actually looks to utilize the produced water from oil and gas, a very difficult hypersaline medium that not many people have PDO and their success on their reed bed projects, but again goes to evaporation ponds, so there's no real use case basis for it. So we had to look at, if we're going to create all this clean water and we're going to create a cost-effective way of doing it, how are we going to use it? What are we going to use it for? So we thought, well, you know what? We're going to create an agricultural-based company in Oman as well, because there is no agricultural-based oil market here. So we moved to Camelina, and we looked to team with ExxonMobil in the US, who got 330 million acres in California of Camelina. Camelina is a dual crop, and you'll have heard from SQU and the universities about the differential between food security and oil production or oil crop-based production. The great thing about camelina is it's a good dual crop. So what that means is that basically we can use it for food and we can use it for oil on a dual rotation. So 2 rotations of camelina, wheat, maize, potatoes, dragon fruit, whatever you want, whatever you can dream up to grow in country. And the camelina, after those fruit productions or food productions or cereal productions, then soaks up all the over-nutrification or nitrification that we utilize for these cereals and then baselines the land. So it's got millions and millions of benefits. The other benefit about is that the fact that it's actually a low water-based crop. So where you've seen some of the other oil-based crops of 40% oil, camelina only needs 12 inches of rain per year. So it's drought-proof, and the fact that it can actually take semi-saline waters means it's perfect for the water quality that we have here. Now, even when we take the use case of NAMA's wastewater, which is cleaned and pumped to sea, again, we've now got a use case base for a huge land requirement of what we've got. So between these 2 plants that we have here, what we're aiming for is 1 million acres of land of camelina production and a dual use case production. So this will be the first large-scale agricultural-based production in Oman and in UAE and within the Saudi ranges as well. So this is something for me and for the team at WAQOD and X3 that really want to push, is we want an Omani first, or a regional first for Oman. So instead of Saudi getting the big and the UAE coming in first for a lot of things, we want Saudi to, Saudi? No, we don't want to be our first. We want Oman to be our first and push these projects and actually produce this quickly. So we're working hard right now to make sure that we can make this happen. Now, in terms of the regulations and the regulations to follow, we like to ask for forgiveness. So in the private sector, we put our money out first, and then if we're in trouble, we talk to the government and figure something out, and then we'll go to the regulations and build them with the government to make sure that it sits and works with us for what we need. You know, when you're facing projects like this, and it is billions of dollars, you know, we're about $6 billion worth of project capital that we're taking to the market right now. And that doesn't just include the CapEx that we're going to put to these units. That includes billions of dollars into the Omani marketplace, GDP, jobs, Omanization, great things that we like to promote about Oman and its future. So that's what we're going to do. Now, when we're talking about, you know, why we're doing this in terms of, you know, people and a country, obviously we have the Vision 2040 strategy, and we have the Net Zero 2050 strategy. And this is just a representation of, you know, the size of what we have to do. You know, this is, we talk about a ton of carbon and how we reduce it within our processes and within the actual technology drives and what we need to do. So it's 1.8 gigatons of carbon that we need to reduce to keep our temperature range at 1.5 degrees C. And to give you a representation, 1 gigaton of CO2 is under there, under representation. It's the entire emissions combined by Brazil and Mexico, but we're looking at, that's just for one, we're obviously 2. So the representation of the size of what we need to do is astronomical. So in terms of the technology paths, we've talked about quite a lot of them. You know, within the heifer route, which is the main oil side of things, and then there's the Fissiotropics and the ESAF. We've actually combined a kind of mix between heifer and ESAF. And then we obviously have the working examples of the feedstocks within our cultures, the fats, oils, and grease that are through there, the agricultural forestry residues, and the agricultural residues, which is, you know, the second generation that we're going for. Algae itself, Exxon was the very last company to hold investment into algae generation for biofuels, and they have taken their money out of that. So right now there are no companies that are looking at algae generation for SAF. It's just, there's no, either the money's gone to hydrogen development or it's gone to biofuel developments. And thank you to Shell for this lovely slide to explain exactly where most of these are going. On energy food crop basis, what waste residues and renewable feedstocks. This kind of showcases how the paths run through to the sub-projects that we've got through. And this is what we're talking about. This is just the accumulation of SAF requirement as taken by Sky NRG that we heard today, and their projections of where we're looking. So the current projections and the current production of where we're looking at is far off its main target. You know, if we really do want to see, do we have a market in Oman? Is the wrong question to ask. Do we have a market? Absolutely do. That's the big case. The operating projects right now, you can see, is quite it's minuscule. There are not many at all currently at 2023. But when you look at the production for the 2028 side of things, most of this is Nesty and our good friends at Topso, who have gone absolutely gangbusters on on their investments and moving forward to actually supply the SAF within the market that they're looking at right now. These are the technology pathways that are currently available, and you can see on the right-hand side the commercialization of these plants and some of the companies that are actually looking at doing this. Again, they're feedstock dependent on everything that's coming through right now, and in a bit of a big problem. And then in terms of the main premise of what the technologies are doing today is the HEFA process. So this is where us as X2E, really, we wanted to look at how do we get around the feedstock issues discussed. You know, we're actually developing an entire marketplace within an agricultural business within Oman because it has to be done. And it can be done across the world in multiple different scenarios. And this really, for me, says, oh, this is exactly the process that we're looking to put into place with where we're at. Now, the issue that we find is that you're going to hear a lot of companies come into country and come into multiple countries say, we need some kind of subvention, we need some kind of financial support to actually make this work. We're going to need government subsidies to subsidize the fuel to make sure that it can go to the clients for the price points that we need. We're seeing it right now in biofuel production, you know, where we're selling at 600 beza on a B100 versus 250 beza for a standard fuel. SAF is exactly the same. It's 3 times the price of right now on the market, and I don't think it's coming down. I think it's actually going to go up as we see market demand going up. Production will be down, but there will be a delta and a delta change through there. How do we make that happen in terms of a non-subvented or non-substituted or government-subsidized product line? Is that we actually look at the multiple product lines that we can create from the process. So for instance, what we're using, even within Camelina, we have 6 revenue sources. So number 1 is the actual oil extraction itself. 40% oil is what we take out from that plant and turn it into jet fuel. Second piece is the meal. So there's a soft white protein, I guess is the best column you can get from it. That is a 40% protein. It's excellent for animals, cows and chickens, which we have a lot of in country. Again, it's another revenue source. Biochar. So you'll see that the steel industry has done amazing feats working with Hydrom towards their arc furnace reactors. So they're turning it into green steel, but then they're still using, you know, the PET coke from the oil and gas industry, which kind of defeats the purpose of a green steel production. So within this, we have biochar or biochar. We can utilize the biocarbon for the metallurgical industry and then actually give them green carbon for green steel and enhance the stuff. And then we have good old carbon credits. We do not include carbon credits into any of our investments. After the Silicon Valley Bank died in a very big way, the stance of ESG investments and utilizing carbon credits is too wild. It's just nobody knows what's going to happen with that market. So we make sure that we have the CO2 as an upside, and obviously our carbon strategy basis on utilizing the CO2 itself in either a purchase or sale from the back end of the processes. So having those multiple revenues actually offsets the need for these subventions and need for these lines, because we have other profits that play if we're going to be good capitalists and good human beings within the business, is that we can offset those profit lines against our fuel, actually drop the price of the fuel and not care too much about how many billions we're going to make in profits from the sale of jet fuel and saving the world. Our investors, or some of our investors, may not feel the same. They have a private equity return that they would like to see. But from our point of view, we think that this is it's 100% a volumetric game. The quicker that we can get there, and the quicker that we can develop these sustainable practices and these sustainable movements in terms of practice within focusing on the good technologies, focus on the new modern practices that we have within agriculture, and focusing on the clever ways that we can utilize the financing structures so that we can actually develop and deploy the capital as quickly as possible that we can when we need it and make it happen. And then to assist the regulators. So we want to help the governments with good policies and good regulations that we have that are out there already. CORSIA is one of the big ones that we have through the RSB. And we've heard about LCAF as well. We actually have another company called G2X, which is a flare mitigation company that utilize the flare gas and the methane within that to create LCAF fuels. The problem with LCAF is there is no pathway. RSB have stated that they will not they will not secure the pathway for LCAF because SAF is the way for them. So in terms of regulations and things that we need done within country when we're concentrating on LCAF, that's going to be one for others and one to be worked with the large oil and gas companies to help get that over. But from our point of view, we're very excited to continue these developments in Oman and around the world. And I think we've got a very, very strong and a very bright future for the country. Shukran.
Thank you, John. I think we have 15 minutes left. We are coping with the time because I just want to remind the audience, by the way, thank you for the presentation. We have many questions, but I just want to remind the audience, this is part 2 of session 2, which focus on stock. We had 10 presentations in this session, 5 in the previous one, so this is the second session. We've been seeing lots of promising feedstock, let's say, for the aviation fuel. We need to focus on the aviation fuel now. This session is about how to scale up the production of LCAF, SAF, and other clean energies, including the hydrogen. I just want to reiterate, feedstock is a challenge in this region. It's not UAE, it's not Oman, it's not Bahrain, it's not Masr or Egypt or others. It's the whole region and the other regions by us. And we are having the largest airlines, the 3 largest airlines in the world in this region. So it will be always a challenge. We have the technology is emerging, but the feedstock is still a challenge. And we are trying, and we are appreciating the exploration of new feedstocks, which will help this industry to keep growing and moving forward. With that, I want to I have my questions, I will keep them if there is no questions, but I don't think so. So I will open the floor to the audience. We have mashallah, the expertise from the energy sector, from the environment, from the aviation sector. I cannot see the mic. If there's any question, please, can you raise your hand? I heard you've been annoyed or you've been upset because we didn't open the floor for you. So there is one in the back. I think this is from Jane. Okay, she's in the back.
It's okay, okay. Can you hear me? So my question is for the representative from Hydro. You mentioned, and I was curious, aviation in our very last slide. Can you hear?
Jane, we cannot hear you. Can you just? No, there is a voice, but can you make it louder?
I will. Can you hear me? It's okay? I don't know. Good. Okay, I'll try again. So my question is for the representative from Hydro. I noticed that you have aviation, you have shown aviation only in the very last slide. And one of the comments I heard was that we are waiting for the signal from the sector to really embark on aviation. And I was very curious because you have shipping in there prior to aviation, and we have sent from the sector a signal well before shipping. So I was wondering, the signal that you were looking forward was the general global policy saying we are committed as a sector to carbon neutral 2050, or the signal you were talking about was coming from the business itself, because Musk have been very active, talking to the producers, etc., etc. Is the aviation industry lagging behind in sending that sign? Why you are considering a shipping prior to aviation?
No, that's a good question. So the simple is, we as Hydro, we are agnostic when it comes to the final product, to a great part. So we are providing a clear framework whereby international developers can come forward and propose their projects for low carbon products or low carbon energy, low carbon fuels. So we are not the ones steering, we are not the ones investing, we are providing a platform for international developers. Now, your question is, why are we not seeing SAF products coming forward in this scale? It might be demand driven. It might be that the regulations or the support mechanisms in international markets are not robust enough to provide the guarantees that these investors, developers require in order to pursue strategy related to Hydro. We will be looking into it, absolutely, because we want to make sure that the green hydrogen produced in Oman can be utilized for a wide range of sectors, including sustainable aviation fuels. So I hope I answered your question.
Jane, are you happy with the answer? No.
So, I'm still a little bit surprised because we have an industry that has declared publicly whatever we have as sustainable fuels, we will buy. In fact, if you go in the market now and try to buy SAF, for example, you can't, because there is no SAF there. Everybody, we have, for 2 days, we have been listening here, the difference in price, we have no offer. The big difference we are seeing in price is a market difference as well, because whatever the producers produce today, they have a demand for it. Like, I want that business, because whatever you produce, you can sell today. Offtake agreements, name one. There is absolutely no sustainable fuels for aviation today in the market. So I cannot see, and forgive me my ignorance maybe in that specific area, but I cannot see how more a sector could come forward in terms of an opportunity to produce the fuel. For hydrogen, everybody's screaming and shouting on e-fuels. Those are proven technologies. So again, there is a market for the green hydrogen, there is a market for the SAF, there is a market, and we cease to see how that doesn't get the right priority. And I'm wondering, can we do something different to show that we are serious and that we need that stuff, and there will be buyers for that?
I think it's a mix of things. So, as developers, what we've seen is, a few times Nesty and Topso, for instance, they're Fisher-Troppic guys. They look for solid liquid fuel waste-based cases that they can do, the easy things that they've done for decades and put a little bit of PLC behind it and call it an autonomized system and modernized. The way that hydrogen is going to take this is it needs developers like myself and other developers in e-fuel basis to utilize the hydrogen to then go and push it in production basis. And right now, hydrogen here is taking priority as power generation. But there are techs out there, and it's the unfortunate thing is that there's not many. There's e-fuel technology companies. There's no e-fuel development companies. There's very, very few of them. So I think that we're going to probably steadily see things come on the market now as gas and liquid systems and new electrolyzers, new solid oxide fuel cells, Bloom Energy, the Blaze for right now, but it's so expensive to get where they're at, that there's now technologies that we're seeing that are coming down in price. And I think that's really their point. That's the piece in the development markets and the commodities markets that are waiting for was these technologies to come down in price so that they know that they can actually get the cost base where they need it to be for large scale production. So the thing about it as well is that these technologies are, they're seen as new, and this is partly the reason why I left oil and gas is because everybody wants a pilot, even if it's been done in the States or if it's done in Europe for 30 years. You can come to Asia, or you can come to the Middle East and be like, wow, it's new here, guarantee me it's going to work in this climate, in this region. I want it, and then I want a pioneer plant, and then I want to scale this up slowly. We don't need to do that. Like literally, it's a case of that these technologies and these whole market drivers are being pushed elsewhere. So now's the time that we can do it and scale. The want and the warrant and the need is here. So there's a huge push, but it does need developers and developers that understand how these forward sell contracts work and how we can actually pool in the cash to get them done. That's the one big piece. The money makes unfortunately makes these projects go, and they're not cheap. They're expensive, big volumetric liners. So I think that now you will definitely start to see ESAF production and the forward sell of ESAF as it comes in. Corsia is already there. They've already put ESAF regulations in place. So I think if the regulators are there, then usually it means there's a good role that we're gonna see this coming.
We took Corsia on board because it's a gap. It's not gonna be staying forever. So we need other solutions to be available. Any other question? Oh, I can see 4 or 5 hands. Do we have time? Oh, I cannot see any from the live.
Small question.
The organizer, do we have time? I have like 5 minutes left. It's fine? Okay. We have one gentleman in the back here.
I have one
He needs a
question
mic.
to Mr. John. مهندس عاشر. لو سمحت يا جماعة.
Cannot hear you.
I have to shout.
Give me the mic أعتقد أو جرب صوتك.
Yesterday I asked the question, but I didn't have enough answer. I'll ask Mr. John today, inshallah. How can we balance between reducing the pollution, the CO, the carbon, the bad things, while we are in aviation? I'm talking about it. We have a mass production on aircrafts. Everyone is buying. Everyone is trying to challenge with his neighbor. And it's a bit of not easy if you can understand me. You got it, John?
Absolutely. No, the operational piece is all down to the technology basis. So what you'll find is a lot of the technology companies out there in an operational basis, they won't look at the full value chain. of the electron that's coming out of the process. So the way that we balance it really is to make sure that we add every single element of production into value chain. So what I mean by that is that let's just take LCAF for instance. So when we're producing LCAF, if we're doing that through a gas to liquid system, we're going to take the main methane, we're going to polish that, very nice and easy, membranes, straight through solid oxide fuel cells, power, nice and clean, no emissions. But then you follow the chain into the heavies. So you have your naphtha, you've got the rest of your nasties that go through that. So the way that we would have to look to do that is then follow the rest of the chain from that side into the power generation, a much slightly dirtier practice, if you like, to get rid of those parts and create value-added byproducts along the way. So when we look at even the gas to liquid side on the GTL, 80% will be jet fuel, about 15% will be biodiesel, and then 5% will be waxes. So utilizing and making sure that each of those value chains are used in every single possible way that we can do. And that's why I made the statement about 4401 and always going to have that need there, because we're creating, when you're working with gas and liquid, you need hydrogen and you need CO2 to create the jet fuel. So when we're looking at that practice, we're always going to have some kind of overproduction of CO2 in some way. But when we're looking at our practice, for instance, when you're looking at SAF standard, to create SAF, you have to be 10 under kerosene based. Of the numbers that we've looked at so far is negative 65 and negative E6. So we actually take out more CO2 from our production and our operations than we do producing the CO2. So getting that negative CI score, that total allowance of our carbon, is the #1 way that we balance that operations and carbon reduction. And especially when we're talking in oil and gas.
I think it's not an easy formula, reduction versus operation increase. So I will take only one last question. This side.
Okay, am I clear? Yeah, I think so. So it's Hamid Al-Baluchi, General Manager, HSC at Opal. My question would be, actually 2050 is down the road. It's only 26 years away from now. Yesterday and today we heard a lot about challenges, about a lot of projects going on in different places. Small so far and scattered. I'm just, the question would be how we can put all those efforts together, to work and to collaborate, because everyone is going through similar sort of challenges at different places. How we can make them work, I mean, with the giant companies, but also the SMEs, the startups, and what support they would require from global organizations, from the governments, policymakers, as well as through the private sector and the aviation organizations, because I see a lot of challenges from the discussion yesterday, and the next would be 2050. If tomorrow is 2050, are we going to be in a panic situation because we didn't make it? So we can overcome all those challenges, make sure we are there. And yesterday there was a topic, how we avoid hitting the pocket of the public, with increase of the aviation cost. If I want to travel in 2050, should I book my flight now at the cost now, or should I wait when hopefully to get better later on? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. And I think you touched on a very important point, collaboration, and that was the whole idea of my presentation, in fact. And I think today is a proof that collaboration could work, and through such events and such workshops, we could understand each other better and know how to move forward. And I think it comes down to making that connection and going knocking on doors and asking for help from the right people. And as I mentioned, we as a government have in place the policies needed to encourage such investments in decarbonization. We have the high-level policies. When it comes to hydrogen, we created the platform for investments. Same thing with energy and SAF as well. As we've not solved everything. With CCUS, we're still working on the proper regulations for that, but we're working closely with industry, and industry has an objective in place. They have the interest, they have the off-taker, they know where they're heading, and it's just a matter of getting the right permits, getting the right licenses in place. We could enable their projects to happen. And it's the same thing with I believe. It's a bottom-up approach where investors could tell us, guide us what exactly are they looking for, and then moving forward from there. But yeah, so it's a collaborative work, and as mentioned by Tom as well, that we don't force developers into one type of end product where the end market would be, or who the off-taker is. But this is something that industry should look into, and we're creating the platform to enable such investments to happen.
Thank you, Engineer Mohammed. So I started this session by saying we might end up with having a debate. I don't think we'll have a debate. We will have a very important takeaway. It's a partnership, and this forum main objective is create such synchronized alignment between the different sectors. And as I said, it's not about the Ministry of Energy. We put a lot of pressure on you, I know, but it's about all the governmental entities within the state to come together with the private sector as well, the investors and let's say innovators and to come with new ideas and start working on the global state framework, as we will have the global framework next month discussing in CAP 3. So this is the first step for Oman to start the big collaboration, to start working on the feasibility studies and the roadmap to understand their market, to understand their infrastructure, their feedstock. There's challenges always. We keep saying there is a challenge in the feedstock. So with this, I would like to thank all the speakers for this for joining me in this session, and thank you for the audience for the valuable question as well. Thank you.
نشكر مديرة الجلسة المهندسة مريم البلوشي وجميع المتحدثين الذين أثروا بمداخلاتهم هذه الجلسة الحوارية بمعرفتهم وخبراتهم القيمة. كانت مشاركاتهم ذات أهمية كبيرة وأضافت قيمة كبيرة للنقاش والتبادل في هذا المجال الحيوي. نتطلع الاستمرار في هذه الحوارات البناءة المثمرة لمستقبل أفضل وأكثر استدامة. أما الآن يسرنا دعوتكم استراحة قصيرة لمدة 10 دقائق، حيث يمكنكم الاسترخاء وتبادل الأفكار والتجارب مع زملائكم. كما ندعوكم لزيارة المعرض المصاحب للمنتدى خلال فترة الاستراحة. نذكركم بأن الجلسة القادمة سوف تبدأ في 1:00. يرجى أن تكونوا جاهزين ومستعدين للاستمرار في استكشاف المزيد من الموضوعات المثيرة والنقاشات المثيرة.